I can't even tell you how good it felt to watch Inside Out 2. We've been in this Pixar content drought for the last year, and it's so refreshing to finally see a new movie in my favorite animated universe. That's really the one word that comes to mind when I think of this movie: refreshing. And this is actually kind of unpopular, but unlike what a lot of people tend to say about Pixar these days, I don't think they ever actually fell off. Sure, maybe the financial success of the movies went through a rough spot, but for the most part, I don't think the quality of Pixar's movies ever really changed that much. In the 2010s, people were complaining that Pixar was making too many sequels, so they said, okay, we'll make some original content. They gave us 6 original movies, yes, I count Lightyear. Then people were like, oh, these movies aren't as good as what they used to make, so then recently they announced that they're going back to making sequels. And then everybody just started losing their minds. I'm not sure why people seem to think that once a storyline is wrapped up, a good new storyline can never be made using those characters. Just because one chapter ends, there's always going to be another one to be told. This movie really shows that sequels aren't always a bad thing. You can have originality within a sequel. So now that Inside Out 2 is out, it seems that the general consensus is that it was actually really good. So for anybody who is worried about Pixar's future, I think this should give them some reassurance that Pixar knows what they're doing. The best way I could explain this movie is to say that it's pretty much on an equal level with the first one. It has almost the same plot in a way. It takes place over the course of 3 days while she's at hockey camp, which is about the same span of time as the first. That was actually something I misunderstood in the trailers. I thought this movie was about her freshman year of high school, but apparently not. I didn't realize that it was actually a hockey camp and it was taking place over the summer. In the first movie, they showed us that hockey was a big part of her life, but it wasn't really part of the storyline so much. This movie though, it fully leans into the whole hockey theme. That's the main basis of this movie. It's about her trying to make a hockey team and fit in, which isn't necessarily a bad direction to take the story, but in my personal opinion, I feel like school is a more life-changing part of life, more so than a summer camp. First day of high school, that's like a big turning point in any kid's life. I even said when they first dropped the teaser trailer last year that my main concern was that they didn't jump ahead enough time from the first. I would have rather seen the story take place when she's between the ages of 15 to 18 so that it actually feels like a new chapter in her life. The idea that she's just hitting puberty now in this movie kind of confuses me a little bit, because wasn't that kind of what the first movie was about? She was already 12 by the end. That's like prime adolescence right there, especially for a girl. So this movie just kind of feels like puberty part 2, but for what it was, it succeeded. This is less of a criticism of the movie itself and more of just me wanting to see an older version of Riley at some point. It would be nice if in another few years they give Inside Out the Toy Story 3 treatment, where they just have a huge time jump to end off the trilogy. Another thing I noticed is that Riley is way less robotic in this one than she was in the first. She felt more like an actual character and not just a robot being controlled by her emotions. So many of the situations she's in are actually really relatable. I would definitely say that this movie achieved everything it was going for. It really felt like classic Pixar again, and it did what I honestly didn't think was possible in making this feel like something that could have come out a decade ago. The animation looks improved but not changed. It still has that same feel that the first one had. And I like how they evolved the style a little bit. In Turning Red, they developed this snappy and expressive character movement, and it stuck around in Elemental. And now with Inside Out 2, you see some of that. I like how Pixar's art style is always improving with each film, but they still keep a signature look to their movies. Now I just want to touch on something that kind of annoyed me a little bit. You might realize that the voices of fear and disgust sound a little different in this movie, and that's because their original voice actors didn't return. I know this was probably something out of their control, but it kind of ruined their characters a little bit for me. Disgust wasn't as bad, her new voice actress sounds pretty similar, but at the end of the day, it still wasn't Mindy Kaling. Fear though was pretty hard to listen to. Of all people, he was replaced by the guy who plays Forky in Toy Story 4, and he really sounds nothing like Bill Hader, the original voice of Fear. Every time he speaks, I just hear Forky. Another small criticism here, this movie felt kind of short, and at first I thought that might just be a testament to how much I was enjoying it, and to some extent it probably was, but when I really sat down to think about it, the story could have used some more breathing room. In reality, the movie was an hour and a half, about the same length as the first, but I think what it really comes down to is the way it manages its time. In the first one, we get to see a lot more places. We go from her early childhood in Minnesota to San Francisco, then we get to see her school and then the hockey side of her life. This movie though is just about the hockey, and there's just less stuff we get to see in general, which is probably why it felt like it went quick by the time it was over. And I felt like it was kind of missing that home life dynamic that made the first one so special. But at the same time, I do get it. As you grow up, your life becomes less about your parents and more about your social life. I just would have liked to see some other parts of her life too. They just just kind of ditched the islands of personality concept. They missed such a good opportunity to create new ones that reflect her new interests. So overall, I would say definitely go watch it. It lives up to the first one. And I'm looking forward to wherever they decide to take this franchise in the future. Anyway, let me know what you thought of Inside Out 2. Thanks for watching, and bye.